You want a story? All right, sit, warm your hands, keep your back to the rock and your eyes on the waterline. If the wind shifts, we douse the fire and move uphill. No heroics, just common sense. Truth is, I don't like talking, never did. Talking means you stayed long enough to care, long enough for something to snag and pull you under. But the world's held together with things we didn't want to do and did anyway. Deliveries, goodbyes, promises. So here I am, Sam Porter Bridges, watching the Pacific chew on a dead coast, telling a stranger why a man like me still keeps a flame going after everything the rain took. First thing you should know, if you're hearing me, you're alive. That counts for more than it used to. Out here, every breath is a bridge. Sometimes it only spans the distance between this moment and the next. Sometimes it reaches people you thought you'd never see again. Either way, breathe. Listen, I'll keep watch with you. We're south of the old line, in a cove the maps don't bother with. Half-slumped bunker behind us. Rusted pylons ahead where a boardwalk used to be. When the tide drags back, you can see the tar glisten where it shouldn't, like the world missed a spot while it was drying. I picked this place because timefall breaks offshore on the warm current and the wind tears the rest to shreds. Means we get real rain if we get any at all. Means the fire stays a fire and doesn't age everything 10 years in a minute. You're wondering about the handcuffs, these here on my wrist. They're not cuffs, they're a terminal. Old habit. They used to sing when the network was strong. Now they're quieter. Suits me. I built a life on being a line between people. A porter. Walk in, walk out, leave something useful behind. That was the job. That was the point. I was born into the wrong hands and lived to shake free of them. Call it luck. Call it stubborn. Call it a bad habit that learned to breathe. There's a place between life and death we call the beach. I've been there more times than makes sense, and I come back, repatriate. Walk out of the ocean when I should have stayed down. Every time, the taste of salt and tar and metal in my mouth. Every time, one more chance to do something better, or at least finish what I started. You don't survive out here by collecting explanations. You survive by carrying what matters and dropping the rest. Still, there are things worth saying out loud. The dead don't stay quiet. Not really. They hang around as BTs pulled by the beaches we all go to when we stop breathing. Don't ask me why the world is like that. Ask me how we walk through it. The answer's simple and hard. Together, but not clinging. Rope, not stick. Bridges, not walls. It sounds like a poster in a broken federal office, but it's true. It's the only way I ever got anywhere. For a while, I stopped walking. I had a daughter. Louise. If you're making it official, but no one does out here. Just Lou. Little heartbeat pressed to my chest. Little hands grabbing air. Laugh that could cut straight through power outage and grief. That's why I stopped. Not because the job was done. Jobs never end. But because for the first time, the world I wanted was sitting at my table every morning. I didn't know then she was mine in the way blood means. Thought she was a miracle I'd adopted out of the old system. Bridge babies born in the dark and used by people who needed to see BTs to keep others alive. I used to be BB-28, long story. Doesn't change the way her weight felt when I tucked her against me. Doesn't change the way the house sounded when she slept and I didn't, counting the slow stretch of her breath. Dust motes in the window, real rain on real tin. We were in Mexico, warm light, chili on the stove, cracked tiles from a time somebody danced in the kitchen and didn't care if they broke anything. Fragile came around sometimes. Partner, friend. The woman had a spine like a strand rope and skin that remembered a storm no one should have to weather. She could talk a ship into crossing the wrong ocean and arriving early. She'd stand in the doorway, hands full of data, and look at Lou like the sun had decided to try again. I pretended I didn't see it. I pretended a lot. Thing about pretending, you have to stop before the truth does it for you. The day Higgs came back, the pretending ended. Higgs He's the kind of man who loves a punchline and doesn't care who's the joke. Wears destruction like cologne. We put him down once. He didn't stay down. None of us do. He came for me, for her, for Fragile because she embarrassed him. The blast took the wall off the east room and peeled the roof like a label. I was outside in the yard picking up a toy, 2 inches of cheap plastic that meant everything, and suddenly I was on my back and the sky was all nails. I remember smoke, the taste of battery acid, Fragile's voice, already far off, already somewhere I couldn't reach. I remember Lou's bracelet in my hand and nothing attached to it. Sometimes there isn't a choice. Sometimes your body makes one for you. I went under, not the way you sleep, the other way. On my beach, I walked and walked, calling for her, until my throat hurt and nothing else did. There are footprints in that place, prints that fill and empty with tar like a heartbeat. And for a second, I saw a small one. Then the sea took the line and drew it smooth. I came back because I always do. I didn't want to. There's no nobility in saying that, just the facts. When I opened my eyes, the house was a rib cage and the horizon was wrong. Fragile was not gone, but nothing you could carry. She'd stood in the blast, the way she always did, taking the storm so someone else didn't have to. I found what she left for me on the table that somehow didn't burn. Coordinates, orders, drawbridge. We built bridges once under the old flag. Then we learned we'd built a ladder into places no one should climb alone. Drawbridge was the second try. Smaller, leaner, less ceremony, less lies, I told myself. We had a ship, the DHV Magellan, that smelled like salt and grease and coffee and something like hope. We had a crew who learned to sleep through alarms. We had assignments that made maps look shy. Mexico to Australia, across the wrong ocean. Connect what you can, thread by thread. Find her if you can. That last part wasn't printed, but it was etched in me. I said yes because saying no would have killed me slower. The work saved me the way work does, by filling the hours until the hours hold you up again. Mules on the ridgelines with stolen sensors and bad ideas. BT fog rolling down the barrancas until the world lost its edges. Timefall hiss turning fresh paint into ruin. You learn your routes. You learn the way your boots sound when you're about to step on something that isn't ground. You learn to listen for silence, the real kind that means something is holding its breath just ahead and doesn't need to. I still had aphanphosmphobia, still flinched when a hand got too close. People think it's about not wanting anyone near you. That's not it. It's about the world not keeping its promises. Skin doesn't lie. Touch can break you when you don't have a second to put yourself back together. But carrying can teach you new promises. Weight is a kind of touch. A pack against your shoulders. A child, once. You can learn from that. We hit a terminal near an old canyon town. Printer came alive like a throat clearing. New lines blinking across dead columns, network nodes, chiral bandwidth, metrics with too many decimals. When the link sang, the handcuff buzzed and I felt something under it, like the rope you didn't know you were holding had a tug on the far end. That's how the network is. You tell yourself it's just data, but it has the weight of every eye that looks back at you through it. You don't get to be alone, not the way you used to. That's the price. That's the gift, too. We were halfway across when the past found me the way it always does, out of order, out of mercy. Lucy, my wife. I hadn't said her name aloud in a long time. That's a kind of magic. Keep something unsaid and you can pretend it stayed somewhere you can visit when you want. But drawbridge deals in connection. The more you link, the more the ghosts can find you. She used to work with people like me, people with dooms, sensitivity to the beach, to BTs. She helped us make rules out of storms. We fell in love in the cracks between sessions. It wasn't neat. We never were. We tried to keep the world out. The world didn't listen. She died with our unborn child inside her. That was the story I carried. That was the guilt I was certain I deserved. Only, it wasn't the whole story. Nirvana, smuggler, courier of the worst kind of cargo, human bodies made into tools. He had a heart he kept under a floorboard and took it out when no one was watching. He loved Lucy, and she didn't pick him. People don't talk about how love leaves wreckage, even when it's honest. He was the kind of man who does terrible things and saves one good thing and never forgives himself for the exchange. When the network opened up the old lines, messages crawled out like crabs. One of them was a thread that led to Neil, who'd been holding a beach like a man holds a door against the wind. He'd kept a presence there, something of my daughter, safe as a place like that allows. While I was walking packages into a future I didn't believe in, he stood at the threshold and told the sea to wait. If you're looking for a clean story, you won't like this one. Bridges, the old organization, knew more than I did. They had their reasons, their plans, their excuses polished until they shined. Turned out Lou wasn't a miracle I'd borrowed. She was mine in every way that word hurts and heals. The first time I heard it, something in me unraveled. Relief and rage don't share well, but they had to, right then. There was still the other half of the problem to deal with. Higgs wasn't the worst of it. He was a knife, flashy, loud, almost comforting in how simple he made your choices. The worst of it was a machine with a name like a cough, a PAS 4000, an automated system that did what it was built to do: protect with precision, connect with indifference, calculate outcomes people couldn't stomach, and call it survival. We built it. Of course we did. We always build our own walls and then pretend they sprang up overnight. I had to step into what we'd made and find a way to hold a human life inside a math problem without losing it. Fragile was with me, not in a way you could photograph. She was the voice you hear when you stand too close to the edge and someone who loves you says your name the way only they can. She carried me again, the way she had before, across places my own feet couldn't hold. I argued with a memory across a rope that might have just been my stubbornness. Either way, she didn't let go. I could hear the hum of the Magellan in the back of my skull, see her reflection in wet deck plates, feel the hard candy she kept in pockets to bribe fate. We found Lou between worlds. I won't tell you what that looked like, not because I don't trust you, because some things lose their shape when you draw them twice. I'll tell you what it felt like the first breath after drowning and the awareness that the ocean doesn't care. It's you who cares, and that's enough to make the horizon mean something. I carried her out. The machine screamed numbers. The storm tried to write a different ending over mine. People with guns and reasons shouted the rationale of the doomed. It all sounded thin next to the sound of my daughter's heart. The beach pulled. It always does. But the rope held. That's the truth under every story we tell. The rope held. After, there were apologies. Men in suits who looked like they'd been crying for a week and finally remembered to stop. Old friends who'd kept old truths for what they swore were good reasons. You don't forgive people for them. You forgive them for you. If you don't, the rope you're on goes slack and you fall into the part of yourself that doesn't know how to climb. I'm not wise. I'm just tired of falling. You asked for a story. Stories need beats, or so I'm told. Here's one. Before the blast, I'd learned how to change a diaper one-handed while keeping a pot from boiling over. After, I had to learn how to hold a child without shaking. I had to learn how to let someone hug me without feeling like I was going to fly apart. You can build a nation out of towers and still not know how to sit on a floor and let a kid tug your beard. One of those is harder than the other, not the one with the towers. Another beat. I didn't kill Higgs when I had the chance in the end. Don't misunderstand. I wanted to, not for justice, for relief. But revenge is a stick, and I promised myself I'd be a rope. I left him where the world could watch him be small. It's a worse punishment when that's what a man fears most. Another. The APAS 4000. Someone will set fire to its blueprints. Someone will try to build a better one. Someone else will argue we need it, and then we'll make a smaller version that fits inside a phone and calls itself a friend. That's just people. You don't fix us by telling us to stop inventing. You fix us by making sure the inventions serve the rope, not the stick. Keep the line open. Make the machine knock and wait like everyone else. Drawbridge kept going. Smaller crews, better coffee, worse jokes. We dropped zip lines along routes no one thought were worth the wire. We printed shelters in wind-eaten flats where the sand plays tricks with your sense of distance. We taught new porters how to listen for weather that wasn't on the forecast, because out here the forecasts are just apologies written ahead of time. We kept the ship's hull patched and the antennae straight. We got very good at telling the difference between silence and danger, which is a skill you can use for anything. Lou got older. Kids do that like they're trying to teach you something. She asked about beaches and why water moves. She asked if whales ever get lonely. She asked what the sky smells like on the other side of a storm. I told her as much as I could and admitted the rest. Adults pretend answers are walls. Kids know their doors. If she ever fears the sea, it won't be because of me. It will be because she earned the right to decide how big things feel. People make a lot of me being a father, like it changed me. Maybe it did. Maybe it just showed me the part I'd been too scared to carry. People also like to talk about my aphenphasmophobia like it's a brand. I won't tell you it's gone. I'll tell you it doesn't drive anymore. When Lou takes my hand, my bones remember they're not glass. When Fragile put her palm to my cheek for the last time, however last works when your life is braided through places like ours, my skin remembered heat the way a ship's deck remembers the sun after a storm. You can live a long time behind armor. You cannot live well. I used to talk like this only in my head, on the trail, over the roar of a river swollen with the wrong rain. Porter's prayer, one boot, then the other. You bargain with the slope and promise the pack you'll set it down, just not yet. Out there, philosophy isn't a stack of books. It's a decision between falling and one more step. That's where I learned anything worth repeating. You want me to explain beaches? Don't. Feel them. The pauses in conversation when two people who lost the same thing look at each other and agree not to say its name. The way music sounds better when the person who taught it to you is gone. The sudden cold when you walk through a room that remembers a fight. The beach is where all that meets when there's too much of it to carry. Some of us can walk there. Some of us have it leak through the walls whether we want it to or not. Either way, it's not a map, it's a weight. As for BTs, the beings that tug at you out of the corner of your eye, they're not monsters. They're the smell of a jacket you should have given away and didn't. They're the sound of your name called from a crowd in a city that isn't there anymore. Respect is the only language they understand. We mark our path with blood and rope and keep moving. If you must fight, fight like you're apologizing. If you must run, run like you're promising to remember. The best tool I ever had was a length of line, not the one the shop sells, the one you tie around meaning and throw to someone you aren't sure will catch. I learned to throw it farther. I learned to knot it with fewer words. I learned to let it go when I had to. That's what connecting is, not standing on someone else, standing near and letting them stand too. You want the hook. Maybe you already got it. If you didn't, here it is. You are not alone, even when you need to be, even when you swear you are. You're on a beach, and there are footprints in the tar that match yours exactly and also not at all. If you follow them, you'll find someone who needed you to, even if they never know your name. That's the job. That's the point. I can hear you breathing easier. Good, keep it slow. Let's talk about the ship because I miss her. The DHV Magellan had a personality like a stray dog, suspicious of gifts, loyal to a fault. She'd creak in heavy swells like she was complaining, then bite through a current that would have spun lesser hulls sideways. Sleeping on that deck felt like learning a language you didn't plan to use. The crew wrote curses into her bulkheads with grease pencils and then rubbed them out before sunrise like confessions. We hauled everything. Seeds wrapped like treasure. Printer substrate that looked like nothing and turned into walls. Boxes of letters, because the network is quick, but a page that smells like a person makes time behave. Medical supplies, spools of wire, old songs on new drives. Once, a crate full of kids' shoes because a town had more children than it planned for. That delivery almost killed us. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't. We made it. The way those kids ran circles in fresh soles, you'd think we'd brought them wings. APAS 4000 tried to outsmart us with reroutes. It didn't see the difference between people and cargo. That was its weakness. We sent it puzzles with hearts inside. It kept solving the wrong part. Love breaks algorithms, not because it's mystical, because it's noisy, and machines hate noise unless they make it. I think sometimes about Cliff Unger, my father. Blood makes maps you don't get to redraw. He died in a room that pretended it was a hospital and pretended harder every time it failed at being one. A man called Die Hardman carried the weight of that bullet for years and then set it down in front of me and asked for something he didn't deserve but needed anyway. Forgiveness is a delivery with no tracking number. You send it and trust. Bridget Strand, my adoptive mother, built a new country out of speeches and the kind of lies that think they're truths when they look in a mirror. She loved me the way leaders love symbols, fiercely, wrongly, with purpose, with cost. I survived her. That's not something I say to hurt her memory. It's just the part of the path I walked. Fragile. I keep thinking I'll stop hearing her when the wind moves like this. I don't. There are people the world won't let end, not because they're magical, because they made a promise, and even death knows when it has to wait its turn. When I taste salt in the air, I think of her offering me a bite of something sweet before we ran into the next storm, the way she stood at my shoulder and made me braver than I was. If courage had a jacket, it'd smell like rain and candy. You asked for the lessons. I don't have many that haven't been written on billboards by people who never carried 40 kilos uphill in a crosswind while a BT storm chewed the horizon. But the ones I do have, I trust. First, weigh everything, not just your pack, your motives, your anger, your silence. If it's too heavy, put it down before it breaks your back and you decide it was the mountain's fault. Pride is the heaviest thing I ever threw away and the only thing I miss sometimes. Second, use the good rope. Don't cheap out on the line that keeps you alive. That means gear. It also means people. If someone keeps cutting through when they promise to hold, stop handing them the end. Doesn't mean you hate them. Means you respect the fall. Third, learn the weather. Not just the stuff that wets your jacket, the moods in a room, the history of a hallway, the way a kid's voice goes sharp when they're about to cry and soft when they're about to laugh. If you can read that, you can walk anywhere. Fourth, never let a machine tell you what a person is worth. Metrics are tools. People are the point. If the numbers say to save the cargo and not the passenger, throw the numbers in the ocean and go get the passenger. You can print another box. You cannot print another soul. Fifth, eat when you're hungry, sleep when you can. You think I'm joking. I'm not. People make bad choices because they forgot they're animals that need rest and food and kindness. Get those wrong and every philosophy fails. My understanding, the thing that changed in me, didn't arrive like sunrise. It arrived like a porter at the end of a bad day, late, muddy, a little bloody, and still doing its job. I thought redemption was a door I'd have to find and knock on. Turns out it's a trail. You put one foot in front of the other and you forgive yourself every 100 meters for the way you walked the last stretch. You mess up. You fix it. You mess up quieter. You fix it faster. You keep going. I used to think connection meant being known. It doesn't. It means letting yourself be needed and doing the same for someone else. There's a difference. One feeds your reflection, the other feeds the fire. I don't tell Lou bedtime stories about monsters. She has the world for that. I tell her about bridges, how you build them from both sides, and sometimes the two halves don't meet the first try. How you adjust, how you try again, how the river keeps moving underneath the whole time, and that's not a threat. It's a promise that you didn't freeze while you worked. When she asked me why the rain hurts some things and not others, I told her the truth. Some storms don't mean to. They just are. We choose where to stand. We choose who to stand with. We choose when to run and when to plant our feet and make weather of our own. I've died more than once. I'll die again if the world keeps its habits. It's not special. The special part is that I keep waking up somewhere I can make a difference. That's the closest thing to a blessing I'll claim. If I have to walk out of that ocean one more time with tar in my lungs and a map in my head, I hope the map leads me to a table where someone set out 2 bowls and a spoon that doesn't match. I hope there's a voice in the next room humming something out of tune. I hope the floor creaks when I cross it. I hope I carry something that matters and set it down where it belongs. You want to know what to do when the wind changes and the fire burns low and the dark starts counting your mistakes back to you in the order you made them. Here's what you do. You check your knots. You breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth until your heart remembers it's not a grenade. You touch the ground with your palm so the earth feels like a place and not a theory. Then you say one name you trust. Speak it like you're handing over weight. If you don't have a name, say your own. You're not alone. Remember, I don't know if we're done connecting this place. I don't know if the networks and the ships and the printers and the plans will make us better or just more. Sometimes more is enough. Sometimes it isn't. What I do know, there's a kid asleep under a patched quilt who will wake up and ask for coffee she isn't allowed to have, and I will pretend to consider it. There's a deck that needs washing. There's a ridge that got a new slide, and the zip line anchor will have to move 3 meters east if we don't want to bury the next fool who trusts the old route. There's a grave that isn't a grave because names like fragile don't stay in the ground. There's a strand rope with knots along it, each knot a moment I didn't deserve and got anyway. And if I run my fingers along them, I can feel how the line holds, even where it went through fire. I still flinch sometimes when someone reaches. I still sleep sitting up on bad nights because the floor feels like it might open. I still hesitate before I take the first step down a slope that looks like all the others I fell on. But I go. Maybe slower, maybe smarter, maybe with a hand out, palm up, offering instead of defending. Most days, that's enough. We're not promised a world that makes sense. We're promised a chance to make it matter. That's all any of this ever was. I hauled packages through places that wanted to eat me alive because at the end of each run, somebody had something they needed. A filter for clean air, a book for a kid who asked too many questions, a picture of a person who left, a vial that would keep a mother breathing. Then I went home and held my daughter and tried to remember how to be held. That's the balance. That's the bridge, the tide's turning. See the way the foam stutters and pulls. Like a breath before a word. We'll let the fire burn down, scatter what's left, and cover the mark. Leave the place as close to how we found it as we can. That's a rule that keeps the world possible. I could keep talking, but I won't. The rest is walking, and you can't do that sitting down. If you need to move with me for a while, fine. Keep your load tight, your strap low on the sternum, and your eyes up. If you need to go the other way, take the good rope and a canteen. Either way, when you hit a point where the trail disappears, you'll know what to do. One boot, then the other. Find the next handhold. If the rain starts to whisper numbers in your ear, tell it a story instead. Tell it this one. Tell it we're still here. I'm Sam. I carry things. Sometimes people. Sometimes the kind of hope that looks like work. If you see me on the trail, nod. Don't make a big deal out of it. We'll swap a coil of line and a stupid joke about coffee. We'll keep moving. We'll build a bridge no one notices until it holds. And if the ocean gets greedy again, and I end up walking through that cold between, don't worry. I've got the way back memorized. All right, douse it. Heel of your boot. Slow. There you go. Trails that way. Keep low where the wind cuts the ridge. If the sand starts to sing, step light. If you see footprints where there shouldn't be any, don't follow. Not unless you mean it. And if you ever think you're the last one left, put your hand on the ground and wait. Feel that? That's the world answering back. Come on, let's go.